Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a stack of source material that's, let's just say, pretty unconventional. We're diving into the raw material and ancient astronaut speaks put together by Don Elkins, James Allen McCarty, and Carla Rueckert. And what we're looking at here is essentially decades of notes, research, transcripts, all about investigating some, well, pretty strange phenomena. Things like alleged UFO contact, psychic stuff, channeling experiences. It's definitely a lot to sift through.
Exactly. And that's really our mission today. This material, it touches on things that are often controversial or easily faked: UFOs, psychic phenomena, channeling. The authors themselves knew this. They were really cautious about hoaxes, about superficial work. So our goal isn't to prove or disprove anything in these pages. It's to explore the information exactly as the source presents it. We want to understand the core ideas they're putting forward. Think of this as maybe a guide to navigating what's central in this specific work.
Right. Because it's surprising. The mix of topics. You've got physics and time theories right next to claims about ETs, psychic powers, reincarnation, and this really elaborate cosmic philosophy underneath it all. Okay, so let's unpack this. The story really starts with the authors themselves, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Their research goes back almost 30 years before this book even came out. Don Elkins, he had an engineering background, and he started doing these experiments trying to figure out telepathic contact.
Yeah, and those early attempts sound, well, honestly, a bit wild. They talk about sessions where people were making this raucous symphony of guttural clicks, slurps, and tum flops, apparently trying to communicate telepathically. Carla, who later became the channel, said she was just struggling not to laugh. It sort of shows how unusual, maybe even frustrating, their early research could be. Not exactly what you might expect.
And it wasn't just telepathy. They were also deeply interested in materialization, how things appear and disappear, which tied into their interest in UFOs, right? How they supposedly materialize and dematerialize. Don apparently visited a lot of seances, very methodically, looking for some kind of repeatable materialization he could actually believe in, hoping for clues about UFOs.
Mm-hmm. And amidst all that, Carla describes this really personal, unexpected experience. She was at a seance, and this figure appeared. She called it a rather solid ghost known as Sister. And this figure spoke directly to her. Later, Don pointed out that his own deceased mother was known as Sister in the family. So you see these very personal, unexplained moments happening right alongside their more structured research.
And there was another factor, Carla's health. She was dealing with some serious issues: juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, which made things difficult. That's when James Allen McCarty, or Jim, came into the picture, joining their group, LL Research, in 1980. The source says he really helped out with the practical side, organizing things, transcribing, that kind of stuff.
And this is interesting. The source makes a point of saying the contact with Ross started just 3 weeks after Jim joined. Carla had done channeling before, consciously interpreting information, but this raw contact, it was presented as something totally different.
Okay, let's get into that difference, because the setup for these RAS sessions, according to the source, it's incredibly specific. Carla lying down, covered with a white cloth, eyes covered, and then certain objects: a Bible open to John 1, a chalice of water, incense, a white candle placed in a very precise line above her head, and her head had to be aligned exactly 20 degrees north by northeast. Very specific.
Right. Very specific roles, too. Don was the questioner, the only one asking questions. Jim transcribed everything Ross said. And before the session, Jim and Carla would apparently spend time filling the water with love vibrations, as the source puts it. But the key thing, the unique part, according to the source, is that Carla's consciousness supposedly leaves her body. Ra then uses her body to speak. The source is very clear. Carla has no idea of what has occurred during the session. Afterwards, she wouldn't remember. And Ra's voice is described as slow, very measured.
So who or what does the source actually claim Ra is?
Okay, according to the material, Ra says they are a social memory complex. Think of it like a group mind, not an individual. And they claim to originate from Venus. They also say they first contacted people here on Earth in Egypt about 11,000 years ago.
Okay, 11,000 years ago. What was their purpose then, and why come back now through Carla?
Their stated purpose, both then and now, was to teach, learn, and share this core concept they call the Law of One. But they say the first attempt in Egypt didn't really work out as planned. Their message got distorted. Instead of grasping the philosophy, the Egyptians, according to Ra, started worshiping them, especially because they helped build the pyramids. Ra says their teachings were, quote, robbed of the compassion, and they became worshipped as builders of a miraculous pyramid. So because the message got twisted, they left.
Which raises the obvious question.
Yeah.
If they want to help, Why is this contact so indirect now? Through channeling, kind of hidden away. Why not just show up? Ra even says it's not available to many of your peoples.
Well, this comes down to what Ra calls the law of confusion, or basically free will. They state they can't just appear openly or give absolute proof because, as they put it, many people on Earth simply do not desire to believe in or have proof of our existence. Open contact would violate that free will, force belief on people. So this method, through someone like Carla, is described as being required by our understanding of free will. It forces them to remain in hiding, essentially. The idea is to spark seeking from within, let people evaluate the information for themselves, without being overwhelmed by proof.
Okay, so let's peel that back. What is this law of one, this central idea they came to share?
At its absolute core, it's the idea that everything is fundamentally connected, unified. The perspective is that everything that exists is the creator, all of it. It's all one thing. And this ultimate reality, this unity, is equated with absolute love. Ra also calls it the original thought, this idea of total oneness. So behind all the diversity we see, there's supposedly just one consciousness, one energy.
And building on that idea of unity, they talk about densities, levels of awareness or vibration. How does that fit in?
Yeah, densities. You can think of them like levels in a school, maybe. Different stages of consciousness and existence within that one creation. The source describes this progression and evolution through densities. First, second, third, up towards an eighth density, which they call completing an octave. And third density, where humanity on Earth is said to be right now, is presented as really, really crucial. It's the density of self-awareness, where beings kind of wake up to themselves as individuals and face a major choice.
What's that choice?
It's basically about how you orient your life, your energy. Is it towards service to others or is it towards service to self? That's presented as the big lesson of third density. And the source claims that Earth and the people here ready for it are right now moving into fourth density.
Okay, and this idea of moving between densities connects to something called harvest, right?
Yes, exactly. The material describes time as cyclical, not just linear. There are these big cycles, about 25,000 years each, making up a great cycle of roughly 76,000 years. At the end of a major 25,000-year cycle, the source says, beings who've sufficiently polarized, meaning they've strongly chosen either service to others or service to self, can be harvested. They sort of graduate to the next density. The criteria given are pretty specific, over 51% service to others orientation or over 5% service to self. But here's the kicker, according to Ra. At the end of the Great Cycle, the 75,000-year one, everyone gets harvested regardless of polarization. Because the planet's vibration itself changes so much, it's no longer suitable for the lower densities. And importantly, the source claims this harvest is happening now.
And within all this densities, harvest there are beings called wanderers. Who are they supposed to be?
Wanderers, as the source describes them, are supposedly beings from higher densities, mostly sixth density. They've apparently chosen to incarnate here on Earth in third density bodies during this specific transition time, this harvest, their purpose, to help raise the planet's vibration just by being here, bringing their higher energy signature, kind of like catalysts. But there's a catch. When they're born here, they usually go through a forgetting process. They lose conscious memory of who they are and why they came. The source suggests that seeking, things like meditation, can help them start to remember their purpose and lessons. Ra estimates there are maybe 65 million wanderers on Earth now.
Okay, let's bring this back to where the authors started their journey investigating paranormal stuff. How does this big picture, law of one, densities, connect back to things like, say, bending spoons with your mind or psychic healing?
Well, Ray's view, as presented, is that these abilities aren't really paranormal at all. They're natural potentials. They're seen as manifestations of accessing what the source calls intelligent infinity, that underlying unified consciousness. It involves opening a sort of pathway or shuttle in your own energy field, your spirit. Ray even defines magic in a very specific way, the art of causing changes in consciousness at will. Not supernatural, but intentional consciousness work. And they suggest that working on your inner self, your magical personality, as they call it, like balancing your reactions, really understanding your experiences, taking responsibility, that strengthens this connection to intelligent infinity.
The source mentions metal bending specifically, referencing Uri Geller, and also the story of a 14-year-old boy who bent a fork after seeing a UFO.
Right. And the source notes this kind of abilities seem to be popping up spontaneously in kids, calling them Gellerizing children. It presented almost like a sign of the times, maybe linked to these shifting energies they talk about.
And what about psychic surgery? That was another big interest for the authors.
Yeah, according to Ra and the author's interpretation in the source, psychic surgery works on the very same principle as ghosts or UFOs appearing and disappearing. It's materialization and dematerialization. They describe the process. The healer scans the body, the skin seems to open or become permeable, the healer's hand goes in, parts are removed, it closes up, maybe some blood appears. Carla even shares her own story in the source about having cysts disappear after experiencing it. And it's interesting, the authors deliberately chose not to keep any of the removed specimens. Why? Because they didn't see them as actual physical parts being removed. They viewed them as temporary materializations created during the event itself. The source also kind of compares the religious setting often found in the Philippines with a healer like Pachita in Mexico, suggesting the mechanics might be similar even if the cultural context is different.
Okay, shifting gears quite a bit here. How does this view of reality mesh with or maybe challenge standard physics?
This was something the authors found really compelling. They talk about that old physics puzzle. Action at a distance. How does gravity work across space? Or electromagnetism. It led them to look into the work of Dewey B. Larson and his unified field theory. They felt it resonated strongly with the RAM material.
Larson's theory starts from a pretty different place than standard physics, doesn't it?
It really does. Instead of the usual 4 dimensions, 3 space, one time Larson proposed 6, 3 dimensions of space and 3 dimensions of time, including something he called coordinate time. And authors saw a direct link here. They wrote, the contactees were suggesting that time was not what we think it is. Larson suggests the same thing. They even quote the material. The UFOs were said to move in time as we move in space. This would be entirely normal in Larson's time-space portion of the universe. The source also mentions that Larson's theory could apparently calculate physical constants from the subatomic level all the way up to stars. And Ra had commented that their view of creation is fundamentally simple and unified a concept the authors felt Larson's math seemed to express. So the idea is maybe UFOs aren't breaking physics, just operating by a different, maybe deeper set of rules.
Let's dig into the history side now. Ra apparently gives a whole history of ET interactions with Earth. Claims the Confederation, their group, has tried to help humans multiple times over, like the last 75,000 years.
Yeah, according to the source, these were attempts to guide our evolution. They mentioned a transfer of beings from Mars, the red planet, around 75,000 years ago, saying that formed the basis for most of humanity today. Then around 58,000 years ago, contact with Mu, or Lemuria, described as spiritually advanced but technologically simple. Their civilization apparently ended due to Earth changes, and survivors moved to places like Russia and the Americas. About 13,000 years ago, contact with Atlantis, focusing on healing and crystal work. Then Rad's own group in Egypt 11,000 years ago. And interestingly, they say the same group went back to South America about 3,500 years later, but claim the pyramids built there weren't used as intended.
Okay, those Egyptian pyramids. Ra claims they built the big ones. How? If not, dragging blocks.
This is one of the more extraordinary claims. Ra says they were thought-built by their social memory complex, created as thought forms, not physically constructed block by block. The explanation given is that the stones themselves possess a kind of intelligence. They're alive, in Ra's view, and Ra could speak to that intelligence, willing the rock to move or even materialize right there. There's a specific distinction made, too. The Great Pyramid was supposedly built with everlasting rock, this thought form material, while other pyramids were built using moved physical stone, suggesting maybe different methods or purposes.
But wait, if the Great Pyramid was a single thought form, why make it look like it's made of blocks?
Back to that law of confusion again. Protecting free will. Ra states they wanted to create a powerful healing machine or time-space ratio complex designed with specific energies. But, quote, they did not desire to allow the mystery to be penetrated in such a way that we became worshipped. Making it look like it was built conventionally maintained that element of mystery. It allowed people to choose how to interpret it, preserving free will and avoiding the worship issue they had before.
So what was the intended purpose of these pyramids, according to Ra?
2 main things, primarily. Healing and initiation. They were designed as energy devices, using crystals and their precise geometry to channel energies. But the healing function was apparently linked to initiation. The source says you needed a purified and dedicated channel, a spiritually prepared person for the healing to work best. So the initiation process itself had physical and spiritual parts. Going inside into the chambers involved sensory deprivation, a body initiation for self-discovery, and the specific alignment within the structure, like the king's chamber, was meant to help channel intelligent infinity, a spirit initiation.
Now, the source is clear that not all ET contact is from this benevolent confederation. Ra talks about an Orion group. What's their story?
Right. Ra presents them as the polar opposite. Confederation is service to others, the Orion group. Their orientation is service to self. Their goal, as claimed in the source, is essentially to enslave populations, but, and this is key, by their free will. They do this by contacting individuals or groups already leaning towards service to self, spreading their philosophy, and trying to build up an elite on the planet who will then control everyone else.
And the Orion group provides specific kinds of help or information.
Yes, both technical and non-technical, according to Ra. The technical stuff is described as teaching various means of control or manipulation of others to serve the self, ways to gain power over people. The non-technical is more about telepathically broadcasting the service-to-self philosophy, often subconsciously, plus giving specific rituals and exercises to groups who want to increase their control.
This leads into a really controversial claim Ra makes about the figure Yahweh.
Yeah, this is definitely a point in the source that could be challenging for many. Ra claims that Yahweh was actually part of the Confederation, but in Ra's assessment was mistaken in its attempts to aid humanity. Ra says Yahweh's interactions involve genetic alterations described sort of like cloning and also sexual contact plus direct telepathic communication. Now, while the intent might have been good, Ra claims these specific actions unintentionally created openings for the Orion group to gain influence here. Specifically, Ra links Yahweh's actions, combined with humanity's existing tendency towards separation, to the rise of the concept of holy war, exploiting the idea that some groups are separate and superior. So within the source's narrative, it's presented as a well-intentioned mistake leading to negative consequences exploited by the service-to-self group.
What about things like close encounters, abduction reports, physical exams? How does the source frame those?
Ra says both the Confederation and Orion make contact, but claims the preponderance of contacts is Orion-oriented. Confederation contacts are described as trying to be gentle, often happening in dreams or subtle ways, especially with wanderers, aiming to avoid fear and just stimulate inner seeking. Orion contacts, though, are said to deliberately use the physical examination as a means of terrifying the individual, including, yes, reported sexual experiences. Ra claims the purpose is to demonstrate the control over the Terran inhabitant, but adds an interesting layer. Often these are apparently thought form experiences, maybe not physically happening in our density, but felt intensely by the person.
And the source mentions a few other ET presences briefly, too.
Right. Besides the Mars and Maldek connections for human origins, they also mention the Elder race. These are described as second-density beings, like animals who chose to stay on Earth but inhabit third-density physical forms. Ra describes them as Bigfoot-type creatures, very good at staying hidden. Just another thread in the complex tapestry the source presents.
Okay, so after all that, the philosophy, the history, the good guys, the bad guys, where does this leave someone listening? What guidance does Ray offer for personal spiritual growth, for seeking?
Well, a key idea is that third density, our current experience, is actually a place where you can accelerate growth much faster than in other states. Ray outlines these disciplines for finding the heart of self. There are mental disciplines, like really knowing yourself, honestly seeing your own polarities, the good, the bad, all of it, accepting that whole picture inside yourself, not just picking the nice parts, then extending that acceptance outwards, seeing the same completeness in others, and understanding how your mind connects to the collective mind and ultimately the infinite mind. There's also understanding the body, how emotions affect it, accepting its polarities too. And finally, seeing the spirit as a channel. The mind and body need to be open, receptive for the spirit to connect to intelligent infinity. Ray claims that when you consciously open that channel, abilities like healing become, well, ordinary, commonplace.
And meditation gets singled out as really important for this.
Oh, absolutely. The source says again and again that meditation is the best means of attaining understanding, of progressing spiritually. There's even specific advice about group meditation being good for contacting Confederation sources. And for any meditation, they suggest using tuning methods first, like prayer, chanting, reading something inspiring, visualization to kind of align yourself before going deeper.
And reincarnation is obviously central to this whole path of learning lessons.
Definitely. It's seen as the way we learn the lessons we chose, which Ra says are always about how to love better, more fully. That forgetting process at birth is seen as necessary for third density, so we can make genuine choices without being overwhelmed by past lives. Seeking is basically peeling back that veil, remembering the lessons. The source even gives this detailed example of a boy whose allergies were cured through hypnosis, where he contacted his higher self. The allergy was apparently linked to a past life where he valued things over people. The physical issue was manifesting that unresolved lesson.
So it sounds like our everyday reality, the illusion as they call it, is actually the classroom.
That's exactly it. Ra says the illusion you experience is surrounding you for the purpose of teaching you. They argue that the illusion feels so real because of the complexity that man upon this planet has generated. So, seeking truth involves, in their words, divorcing your thinking from such complexities and tuning into the creator within you and all around you, recognizing that unity, you and your creator are one. The insight is that your everyday life isn't just random stuff happening, it's specifically designed for your soul's learning.
Does the source mention any particular pitfalls or challenges on this path?
Yeah, a couple of things. Ra notes that our relatively short lifespans now, compared to earlier times, can make it harder to gain wisdom across lifetimes. It can lead to a kind of perpetual childhood for souls. And indifference is called out as a major sinkhole, just being apathetic, not choosing a path. It apparently stalls progress because you're not polarizing either way, service to others or service to self.
And this current time period is seen as especially important for this whole process.
Very much so. They call it a great transitional period, a time of major shift. Ra claims there's been a sharp increase in souls incarnating now who have fourth density potential, a new breed, they say here specifically, to help with the transition and start that next level of work. And the planet itself is supposedly going through changes too, ruptures in its outer garment, geological shifts to become properly magnetized for fourth density life.
And what's Ra's final advice then for navigating this transition and the path of seeking?
The advice is basically don't get too hung up on trying to preserve the third density world as it is, because the vibration is changing. The real focus needs to be on the heart of self, your inner orientation, your vibration. That's what determines your path forward, your harvest. They bring it back to the core. To serve one is to serve all. And enlightenment, that opening to intelligent infinity, is something you have to achieve for yourself from the inside. Others, like Ra, can maybe offer signposts or encouragement, but they can't walk the path for you.
Wow, okay. That was definitely a deep dive. We covered, well, a massive amount of ground there. From the author's own strange journey, specific claims about ET contact, building pyramids with thought, all the way through this intricate cosmic philosophy of densities, harvest, free will, the law of one, and how it supposedly relates to our own spiritual growth. It's a lot.
It really is. And what the source offers, as we've tried to lay out, isn't just random claims. It's presented as a coherent system, a way to understand reality, ourselves, the universe, trying to connect all these seemingly unconnected dots from UFOs to inner work under this umbrella of the law of one. And again, we've really tried to just present the information as it is in the source, keeping that neutral stance.
Absolutely. This is definitely material for you, the listener, to explore and weigh for yourself. It really invites that internal seeking, just like the source itself recommends.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with, drawn right from the heart of this material. If, as this source proposes, all of creation truly is one single intelligent energy, the creator, and if that means you and your creator are one, what might that imply about your own potential, your own responsibility maybe within this illusion of everyday life? How could that perspective change how you look at your experiences, your interactions, everything around you?
That's definitely something to chew on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the raw material. We hope it's given you plenty to think about and maybe even nudge your own path of seeking.